Thank you, Laura. and happy Thanksgiving. And so we're going to start. Okay, doke. You ready? You should nod, Rachel. You're the only person I can see.
Yes, ready. I
Okay.
did like the comment from Melanie just now, though. Like spreading awareness about our committee as well would be awesome
Yep,
and,
I
and,
agree.
and a great goal.
Okay, I'm going to give this as the thumbs up as the we're going to roll. Okay. Greetings, everybody. I want to welcome our television audience, our guests, members, and interpreters. Um, I do want to inform you that we are going to be rebroadcasting uh, uh, this presentation today on Cox Channel 22, and I believe it's uh, CenturyLink Channel 89. It's also live on the city's YouTube link or YouTube channel. I apologize, and we'll be also archiving presentations. So that's available on the mayor's website at www.cityofomaha.org. Click on the mayor's office, then click on the Disabilities Commission, and it will take you there. Um, I want to remind you a couple things about our mission and purpose. The Mayor's Commission is here. Its first and main objective is to promote the quality of life, accessibility, and equity in all aspects related to the City of Omaha on behalf of and in cooperation with the citizens of Omaha who experience disabilities. To this end, the Commission will advise the Mayor, the City Council, departments, and other City of Omaha personnel on issues of access, representation, employment, housing, quality of life, and other issues that affect citizens with disabilities and their respective families. We also work to serve as a resource for Omaha citizens with disabilities and their families to express their concerns and resolutions regarding issues affecting them. We also work to publicize to the citizens of Omaha the role of the Commission and the resources available to assist citizens with disabilities, employers, housing representatives, business owners, engineers and architects, and others who have a role in bettering the lives of all Omaha citizens. We also work to promote awareness to the general public on the capabilities, needs, and desires of citizens with disabilities. We publicly recognize the efforts of employers, businesses, schools, organizations, and others who've demonstrated outstanding support of people with disabilities. We serve to advocate and have done so in the past year on issues and implement plans and projects to improve services for persons with disabilities and to review and implement plans and projects for advocating for services. Um, I want to remind you that are we had a meeting prior to our discussion, and it was actually one of our a very good meeting where we were talking about some of our plans for the coming year. Um, the downside of that is that we're not in an official meeting today because we're lacking a quorum. Um, I'm actually the only person who's physically here that's a member of the commission. So we that's that's not a quorum. um, So I do want to inform our audience that we'll try and take a chance or try to take the chance, take the opportunity to make announcements at the end of the meeting as we have representatives from all across the disability community in Omaha. So have a pen and paper handy to take notes. At this point, I'd like each of the individual members to introduce themselves and who they're here to represent. I'll start since I had to make the drive. My name is Mark Smith. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Nebraska Medical Center's Monroe Meyer Institute for Genetics and Rehabilitation, which is the University Center for Excellence in Disabilities for the state of Nebraska. And I'm also a parent of and a sibling to adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and that's who I'm here to represent as individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I can pick somebody or you can just go ahead. Either way is fine. How about Rachel?
Okay, yeah. My name is Rachel. I have worked with individuals with traumatic spinal cord injuries and brain injuries for about 6 years now. I also live with a spinal cord injury and also now work with folks in the community with developmental disabilities. So I'm here to represent the needs of those populations.
Thanks, Rach. Megan?
Sure. Megan Walls, my company is Assistology. I do consulting and training around inclusion, accessibility, both in the built environment and for services. And I work across all ages and all disability groups. So I'm here to represent the broader disability community.
And how about Nancy?
I'm Nancy Floro, and I'm with the Nebraska Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and we are the vocational rehabilitation agency that serves individuals that are visually impaired, blind, and deafblind. And Eric did just send a note, Eric Olson, that his mic isn't working, but that he's present.
Yeah, and it's probably worth mentioning, I don't think I'm outing you, Eric, that Eric is a gentleman with who has a disability and does an excellent job as a member of the commission. So I thank him for being here, irrespective of the condition of his microphone. Gerald, you're not as a member of the commission, but as a representative of the city, do you want to introduce yourself?
All right, I'm Gerald Kuhn, Assistant Director of Human Rights and Relations, also the liaison between the Mayor's Commission for Citizens with Disabilities and the Mayor's Office.
Thank you, Gerald. And Laura?
I'm Laura Young with the League of Human Dignity. We do service coordination for Medicaid waiver for individuals 18 and over. And we also have our independent living side as we support people that want to remain or move into their own home and live on their own.
Thanks, Laura. And Stephanie?
Hi, I'm Stephanie Scavdall. I work for Outlook Nebraska. We provide enrichment activities and employment for those who are blind and visually impaired. And I'm here representing that population.
Thanks, Steph. And who am I missing? Lisa.
I am Reverend Dr. Lisa Renee Sherman. I am the pastor at Faith Christian Church, but I also serve on the state CISM team, which is Critical Incident Stress Management Rapid Response. And then also I serve on the Emergency Management Advisory Council for the state of Nebraska to help open up communication between our emergency responders and the community. On that, I represent families with disabilities. My husband and we have adopted 5 children with disabilities with a wide range from intellectual, developmental, and physical disabilities.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks very much. Did I miss any commission members? It doesn't sound like it. We have a couple visitors on the line, who are Zooming in for our meeting. Do you want to introduce yourself, Melanie, Emily?
Hi, I'm Melanie. I'm a USED trainee at MMI under Mark Smith. And I also identify as a person with a disability.
Thanks,
Hi, and I'm Emily Costello. I'm also a USED trainee with Mark at MMI, and I am a sibling to a person with a disability.
Yeah, if all else fails, bring your students with you wherever you go. So thanks, guys. Appreciate everybody who's here. Again, we did not have a quorum, so this is an unofficial session. We won't be approving our agenda or minutes. We're going to have a backlog of stuff to approve when the time comes. So given that, at this point, I want to introduce our presenter for today. Joe Garcia is here and I'm not even going to say the name of your organization because all I ever see is letters. So I'll let you do that, Joe. Joe works in the area of housing and advocacy and does a lot of work with individuals with disabilities. Joe and I had the opportunity to meet because we have a colleague in common who was one of the original founding members of his organization. So at this point, I'm going to hand it to Joe, and we're eager to hear. I should mention that this meeting and the next meeting, our focus is on housing concerns for individuals with disabilities. So that's what brings Joe here.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. If you could let me share my screen. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joe Garcia, and I am the program director for the Fair Housing Center of Nebraska and Iowa, which is just one program of a larger agency called Family Housing Advisory Services. No, it says host disabled participant sharing screen. Okay, maybe that was me. So bear with me. You already know that I've got technical deficiencies here. So there we go.
Very good. Can everyone online see that?
All right, there we go. So once again, I'm just one program of a larger agency called Family Housing Advisory Services. Under the umbrella of family housing, we have numerous programs. The Fair Housing Center of Nebraska and Iowa. I'll get to that as to what we do there. We also have a tenant services program. The tenant services programs assist individuals who are behind in rent, help them avoid eviction, help them pay their utilities. They're the part of our agency that provides financial assistance. We have a home buyer education program, counselors who show individuals the ins and outs of home buying. We have a foreclosure prevention program that assists individuals who are facing foreclosure.
Said they can't see the screen. Give me just 1 second. Sorry, Joe. All right, you should be able to go in now and go back to what you were. Sorry about that. You should be able to go back to the presentation now. From current slide.
From current slide. Can you see it, folks? Bear with me here. From current slide, we're good? All right. So, back a little bit. Oh, geez, Louise. I apologize here. I am going to need some help.
My computer is a touchy one.
From current. Okay, how about now? All right.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I apologize, folks. Once again, those are our programs that we have, like a Fair Housing Center, tenant services, foreclosure prevention program, assists individuals who are homeowners who may be facing foreclosure. We have an Omaha 100 program that assists individuals who want to purchase their first-time home if they qualify financially. Asset management to show folks what they can do to help them further themselves along to eventually get into that first-time home. And then we have an EITC coalition program that does taxes for free. My program, the Fair Housing Center, we joined Family Housing in 1994. We have 6 staff members. 2 of us are bilingual in English and Spanish. We provide services free of charge. My program is a little bit different in that we cover all of Nebraska and Iowa, where all of the other programs just cover Douglas County and Pot County. We're located on 24th and Lake, and that's our main number to my program. What we do at the center is we answer a lot of landlord-tenant questions. I get questions. I take calls just like my staff does. With questions like, I've been given a 7-day eviction notice. Do I have to be out in 7 days? Or can I withhold this month's rent until my landlord fixes my leaky roof? And I tell folks, listen, the information I give you, you do with what you want. If it's January 15th and you haven't had heat for 2 weeks and you don't want to pay this month's rent, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. but the law does not allow you to do that. There are ways to go about getting that fixed, but withholding rent isn't one of them. We investigate allegations of discrimination. I do a lot of outreach and education, trainings and presentations to folks like yourselves, social service agencies, landlords, government entities about fair housing. We also act as personal representatives, advocates on behalf of our clients. I provide technical assistance to housing providers. I encourage landlords, housing providers to give me a call if they have a question about a situation, and I tell them the same thing I would tell a tenant. I'm not here to tell you how to run your business. I will tell you what you are allowed to under fair housing and Nebraska landlord tenant law, and that information that I give you, you do with what you want. And then we have a testing program that is for another day for me to come back and talk about testing. The purpose of the center is to eliminate discriminatory barriers to housing to ensure everyone has an equal opportunity to obtain safe and affordable, decent housing without encountering discrimination. You folks know that where you live is by your choice. You chose whether it's a rental, whether it's a house that you own, you chose to live there because that's where you wanted to live. Whether for whatever reason, close to school, close to family, you grew up in the hood, whatever the case may be, that was your choice. When someone is being discriminated against and denied that choice, that's our purpose. That's to make sure that everybody has that opportunity. Under the Fair Housing Act, it's illegal to discriminate, place different terms and conditions based on a person's race, color, sex, religion, national origin, disability, or familial status. Those are the 7 federally protected classes. Each state can add to it, but they can't diminish from it. For example, here in Omaha, age over 40 and marital status is protected. In Iowa, sexual orientation and gender identity are a protected class, which means you cannot treat someone differently based on any one of those bases. In 2019, the center assisted 1,160 individuals with their housing issue, investigated 339 allegations of housing discrimination, filed 43 fair housing administrative complaints with agencies like Gerald's, Omaha Human Rights and Relations, Nebraska Equal Opportunity Commission, Iowa Civil Rights, Sioux City, Lincoln. We filed over 43 fair housing complaints. We directly assisted 117 individuals in receiving their request for a reasonable accommodation or modification. We conducted a total of 110 fair housing tests, provided outreach and education to 855 individuals, and recovered over $361,000 in benefits for our clients. Quick question. Last year, the center investigated 339 allegations of discrimination. 73% were on one particular basis. Mark Smith, what would you guess that basis be? Race, color, sex, religion, national origin, disability, or familial status?
I would be hard pressed.
Give me a guess.
National origin.
73% of the cases we investigated last year were on behalf of people with disabilities.
Oh.
That's a big number, and that's just not in Nebraska and Iowa. That's clear across the nation. Now, I have my own unscientific theory about that, in that I'm never going to be African American, never going to be a woman, but we all, and I'm using air quotes here, have that possibility of walking out the door, getting hit by a car, and becoming disabled. My point is that there's a bigger pool of people to choose from, which is why, like I said, my unscientific theory of why that's a huge number. That and the definition of a disability under fair housing law is a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities such as walking, such as breathing. Someone with PTSD, anxiety, depression, COPD is considered disabled under fair housing law. So that in itself broadens the definition of a disability under fair housing law. That being said, we do a lot of work on behalf of individuals with disabilities with reasonable accommodations. What is a reasonable accommodation, you ask? It says, a request for a change or waiver in a housing provider's policies or procedures in order to allow that disabled tenant to have full use and enjoyment of their housing just as a non-disabled tenant. What gives rise to a reasonable accommodation request? A person who has a disability within the meaning of the law. The housing provider should know of the disability. The accommodation is needed to allow that tenant full benefit of that housing, and that housing provider knows or should know the need for the accommodation. When does a reasonable accommodation have to be granted? When the request is reasonable and related to a disability. There has to be a nexus, there has to be a connection between the person's request and that person's disability. And it has to be reasonable. Landlords can deny reasonable accommodations, but the reasons to deny it would be it would pose an undue financial administrative burden to the housing provider or alter the basic nature of their business. For example, a landlord would own a fourplex, 2 units on top, 2 on the bottom, but someone is requesting an elevator. Well, for a fourplex, that might be unreasonable. But that being said, we ask that provider, they have to provide that documentation. Just because you say it's going to cost too much doesn't mean it's going to cost too much. We would want to see estimates of what the cost for whatever the request may be, that for your reason for denial. Request should be promptly acted upon. Lack of action may be viewed as a denial. Who meets the requirements? Personal observation or knowledge. So personal observation, someone in a wheelchair, someone who's got mobility issues, a cane, someone with respiratory issues who uses an oxygen tank. Observation, those are obvious. But if they're not, as we all know, not all disabilities are straightforward and can be seen. So that person, if they're requesting a reasonable accommodation, we ask them to provide us a doctor's note that says they suffer from XYZ, and that whatever the request is needed so that they can enjoy their dwelling, or in some cases move out of their unit. That notice can come from a doctor, can come from a therapist, a social worker, a clergy, any mental health professional, someone who's got firsthand knowledge of this person's disability and the need for that reasonable accommodation. Also, a finding by a government agency or insurance company, someone who's receiving Social Security disability. That's all that's needed to show that this person is disabled and needs that accommodation. Reasonable modifications are a little bit different than accommodations. Like I said, the accommodation is a request for your waiver and change in policy, where a modification is a change in structure to the property. The landlord must allow the physical modification to the property when needed by people with disabilities to have full use of the properties. More common ones are wheelchair ramps, widened doorways, bathroom grab bars. The modification, the tenant is responsible for the cost of all modifications, except if that housing provider is receiving any federal government funding. So that landlord's got to allow it, but it's that tenant's responsibility to pay for it. It's also that tenant's responsibility to put the property back to its initial design if that landlord requests, and that's under there are certain exceptions to that. The landlord can demand a deposit to ensure that the modifications are reversed. So I kind of spit to that first part because I wanted to give you some examples of some of the disability work that we do. We do a lot of work for early terminations of lease due to mold. So someone gives us a call and they say, my basement's full of mold, and this comes a lot more during the summertime. My basement has mold, or my bathroom shower has mold, and my landlord won't fix it, but my child has asthma. So what we do is we do an intake, and we ask them, will you be able to provide us documentation that your child has asthma? And they say yes, and they're in the middle of a lease. So those of you who are familiar with renting, you sign a 1-year lease, you are locked into that lease for the full term. You just can't get up and go. So the landlord won't fix the mold or address it, and that in the meantime, that family is suffering because that child has asthma. They contact us. We get everything set up. We do an intake. Ask that client to sign an authorization waiver that says they give us permission to work on their advocate on their behalf. We get that doctor's note, and then that client tells us when they want to be out. Once they determine a date that they want to be out, we contact that landlord on behalf of that client and say, listen, we've been asked to contact you by Mrs. Smith, asking for an early termination of lease because of the mold in the bathroom and because of little Junior's asthma. And oh, by the way, here's a copy of the Fair Housing Law that says you've got to do it. And we don't want you to charge them an early termination fee. We want asking for this reasonable accommodation to waive your policy of an early termination fee. Now, we are a nonprofit organization. We get funded by HUD to do the work we do. And so landlords, they can tell us to go pound sand, and quite frankly, a lot of them have. But like I showed you in one of the earlier slides, we did this for 107. We got these accommodations for 117 individuals last year, and a lot of it had to do with early termination of lease. So that landlord can, like I said, if they tell us to go pound sand, then at that point we tell the client what the response was, and then they have the choice of going forward to file a fair housing complaint, and we would do that on behalf. We would file it with the Omaha Human Rights and Relations Department, Gerald's outfit, or the Nebraska Equal Opportunity Commission. 117 times last year, we were able to avoid that and get that client that reasonable accommodation. And quite frankly, there's 2 reasons why we're really successful at getting that done. Number one, a landlord doesn't want to deal with a fair housing complaint against them, all right? Secondly, and the unfortunate real reason why, it's a lot easier for a landlord to let somebody out of their lease and not charge them any fees, let that person go, as opposed to making the repairs, because that landlord can bring in someone right behind them and rent that place without having to do the repairs. That's the unfortunate truth, but it is what it is. Because we're a nonprofit, I don't have that authority, I don't have that muscle to make them, being landlords, do anything. I don't have that authority, I don't have that muscle. But here again, if we'll get Mrs. Smith out of her lease, somebody comes in after them, they could give us a call and we'll do the same thing for that next tenant. Another example of the work we do is the waiver of a no pet policy or a pet fee for someone with an emotional support animal. As I'm sure you know, or I hope you know, that a landlord cannot charge, like I said, a pet fee or pet deposit for an ESA. We get a lot of that, and this is quite frankly a real stickler with landlords, because it's their property, they don't like to be told who or what they can have, and their most common their most common reason, well, I let you have it, then I got to let everybody have it. Well, no, people with disabilities have a little bit more rights than others. You've got to do it. So this is a very big stickler with landlords. We do a lot of work on requesting reserved handicap parking stalls for individuals who need it. Let's just say this is a 10-plex with 2 parking stalls, but they're always full, and this person needs one for themselves. So we approach that landlord and we request that reserved handicap parking stall that says reserved for apartment 101, and we do a lot of that work. or we ask a landlord to change their due date for rent because the client doesn't receive their Social Security check until after the due date. So most cases, the rent is due on the 1st, delinquent after the 5th, but this person doesn't get their disability check until the 7th. So every month they're going to incur a late fee for paying their rent on time, for paying their rent late. We approach that landlord and say, listen, if it wasn't for this person's disability, they would be paying their rent on time. We're going to ask you, Mr. Landlord, for this specific client to move their due date back to the 7th or 8th or whatever the case may be, so that client doesn't incur late fees every month. More examples, especially for COVID related. We've been doing a lot of work this year, if you will, for people who were given a 30-day notice for non-renewal. Their lease has terminated, or they're on a month-to-month, and the landlord has decided not to renew their month-to-month. But a tenant has underlying conditions, and there's not a lot of places that are showing units. So they've contacted us. We get the documentation that says they have underlying conditions to COVID, and we ask that landlord to extend their lease in 30, 60 days. We don't ask for a year because that's not reasonable. I think the most time we've gotten is 90 days, and landlords, for the most part, because we're all in this together, if you will, suffering from COVID, have been pretty cooperative with extending a person's lease. Another example is air conditioning. Air conditioning is not considered an essential service, except to some people. I believe people with COPD, breathing issues, need a cool environment. So their AC is down, and landlord's not fixing. I'll get to it when I get to it. We contact that landlord on that client's behalf, tell them that they need this for their health conditions. And here again, we're asking you to get on it right away. And usually they're pretty good about, most part of the time they're pretty good about it, because I know if I was a landlord, I wouldn't want to be responsible for someone having bad reaction because I didn't get the AC fixed. Another recent one was an elevator. Someone lives on the 2nd floor, mobility issues, but the elevator's down. And the landlord is telling me that, well, it's going to cost me too much to get it fixed. In the meantime, this person with the mobility issue can't do stairs, and they're stuck in their apartment. So, okay, like I said earlier, provide me that documentation that says this is going to cost you too much. And this is a big building. This is a big complex. Well, all of a sudden, next thing I know, I get a call the next day, it's done. So we're really, really successful at getting this type of work done. We get these calls all the time. I think one other last example I've got is Public Housing Authority. A person with a vision, who was visually impaired, couldn't read the normal, if you will, documentation notices that they were being received. So we approached that housing authority and say, listen, can you send an email? Because it's my understanding that there's certain equipment that folks who are visually impaired can use that helps them read emails better, I believe it is. So we got that done. And then someone who was also visually impaired, we asked them, they couldn't use the washer and dryer in the complex. So we asked that housing provider to put Braille on that machine so that that client could be able to use that washer and dryer that is included in the rent that they pay. I know I rushed through this. I know I'm over my time, I believe, but do you folks have any questions for me?
Folks, questions for Joe?
This is Nancy Floral. First of all, I want to commend you you and your staff for all the work that you do. I frequently share your contact information with consumers, and I know people that I think it was last winter that really struggled because their complex wouldn't do snow removal or put anything down for the ice. And so once they reached out to you, it's funny how quickly they resolved that issue. So, that's just one example of people that we've worked with and, utilizing your services, but also how you've also, worked with them if they needed to file, any kind of further complaint beyond your agency. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's good to hear. It's good to hear a satisfied customer.
This
Yeah, so
this is Laura with the League of Human Dignity. I guess my question is one of two parts. Could I either have a copy of your PowerPoint, or could I set up a time that you could do this again for my 2 independent living advisors?
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the things that I find I'm amazed at the center has been around since '94, and I've been with the center since 2001, so which tells you two things. I've been doing this a long time, and I'm very, very old. So yeah, I mean, and I'm always amazed how people, oh, we didn't know we had rights. We didn't know you folks were here. So anytime I get the opportunity to talk about what we do and people's rights, I jump on it. So please, my contact information is on the next slide with my email. So absolutely,
I will
get in touch.
I'll be getting in touch with you.
That's great.
Great.
Hey, this is Megan Walls. And I apologize ahead of time because I tend to ask hard questions sometimes. So I totally get that you might not have the answers or information on these. But I guess one thing that I've run into, not just in as it relates to housing in my professional work, is that whether it's in the workplace or whatever, reasonable is interpreted in so many different ways. And is tends to be such a subjective measure around, what is the level or boundary on what's reasonable. Do you have any thoughts on, as it relates to housing, like how we can clarify or put some objectivity around reasonable in terms of the requests, accommodations, modifications, those types of things?
Right, you absolutely nailed it. It's very subjective. Then the law does nobody any favors by not making it, and anything in the law, it's never black and white. Obviously, what's reasonable to me may not be reasonable to you. So the question therein, when I do these talks, I do a lot of talks to landlords. The emotional support animal. Can they have alligators or crocodiles or whatever? Just outrageous. And well, no, but and then I tell them, next time you get a tenant who wants a crocodile, then call me. Then we can take it from there. But no, as far as you're right, what's reasonable, it's very subjective. Is it reasonable to have two emotional support animals who are German Shepherds in a studio apartment? No, but I don't, I don't have an answer as how we could do that. The law does not help us in that aspect at all.
Does case precedent in some of the legal proceedings around service animals help with that or give some guidance?
Yeah, we do a lot of, if it's not a easy one, we go back to case law and look it up to see what's going on at other places.
And I just have I have another question or kind of insight type of thing. So I know, and this is going to relate to like new developments or tear down rebuilds versus making modifications to existing homes or structures. But like when a new development is going up, so I'm in this particular case thinking about the Highlander area. One side of the street, all of the buildings, homes are zero entry. So it doesn't matter. You don't have to like just pick the one on the end, if you have mobility issues or use mobility equipment to get in. There's no stairs to get into the first floor levels. But right across the street in the same development, all of those units have stairs going up to the front porch. And I drove down the street and I just can't help but wonder, like, why would they develop them differently? And like, what can be done in the development process and planning to infuse a little bit more equality into that? And I don't know if that's an area that you guys do any work in, but it just really surprises me with these new developments that you wouldn't take that step, or you take it on half of it but not the other half. And I just don't really understand that.
Yeah, and I don't have an answer for you for why they would do that or why they wouldn't, but it's my understanding that the city's got to approve, you know, these buildings, these whatever the case may be, the city's got to approve it. We as far as we have design and construction manuals for for developers, for architects, to see what the specifics need to be. But as to why, I don't have that answer.
Yeah, it's okay. Thought I'd ask. Thank you.
You're right. You do.
Yeah.
You do ask hard ones.
And Megan, those were really, really great questions. Thank you for those questions. Hi, I'm Rachel, and thank you so much for your presentation. Ironically, I actually had to step away for a second. I had a phone call from my new apartment manager. I'm going to be moving this upcoming Saturday, and I do use a wheelchair. I'm quadriplegic. So this has been a really interesting and kind of more personal session for me today. But I was wondering, as I was looking for apartments, I noticed more and more of the newer apartments are advertising as wheelchair accessible. Are you aware, and I'm sorry if you answered this and I missed it, but are you aware of any regulations where that's actually mandated now to have like a minimum number of units that's accessible? Have you heard anything like that?
I have not. No.
Okay. So I guess I was actually surprised. I mean, they're very, very, very few and far between comparatively when it comes to like all the, all the housing in Omaha. The amount of housing that is truly designed to be accessible is very small. But the fact that I am seeing it more in recent years, I think that's encouraging. Also, when I jumped back in, I heard you talking about accommodations that the tenant would have to pay for. I kind of missed what you were saying there, because again, with me moving this Saturday, they are installing a new parking stall for me, a new shower head that's detachable, like a bunch of different things, and it's all at the cost of the apartment complex. Is that typical?
Any change to structure is considered a reasonable modification, and that landlord has to grant it, but it's at the tenant's cost that they got to pay for it, unless that complex or that housing provider is receiving federal funding, most common public housing authorities, or if that complex is getting any, I believe, tax breaks. So then at that point, it's that housing provider's responsibility to grant it and pay for it.
Okay,
so
thank you.
It'd be interesting to know if it may be that they are receiving some type of federal funding. The place you're
Yeah,
moving
because
to.
I thought that I actually thought that was typical until I heard what you were saying about that. I thought I was kind of expecting them to pay for things like that. So now I know I shouldn't have been. Yeah.
Rachel, I rent from one of the larger corporations in Omaha, and with the accommodations that I needed with my dad, they were very willing to do that right away. And it does go back to, and when you were asking the question about newer builds, there is incentives, tax break incentives for having a certain number of apartments that are accessible.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm guessing that they got some kind of tax break on their new build. But congratulations on the move. That's exciting.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's Selden Company here.
Yep. Selden and Broadmoor are probably the two largest. Yep.
So I noticed Selden actually does have some that they've opened that are even like income based and fully accessible. and things like that. So yeah.
And I'm surprised more landlords, housing providers don't do that because there's a whole untapped population. There's such a lack of accessible units. And that's just all, you would think that more landlords would take advantage of it. I'm quite surprised and disappointed at the same time.
My name's Melanie, and I'm sitting in as an intern, but I actually have a question in regards to, I guess, just the education piece of landlords and people who do the actual leasing and touring of people who are searching for apartments. I have found that when you call and say, do you have a handicap unit or a wheelchair accessible unit, there's like this disconnect between what wheelchair accessible means versus handicapped. A lot of landlords think they mean two separate things. For example, everything from, well, it's accessible when you get past the first two steps types of comments. So does your organization do anything to educate and help kind of clear out those barriers? Because it sends a lot of people away who would be searching for housing.
Right. Yeah, we do, like I said, anytime I get the opportunity to talk, and I do a lot of talks to landlords, housing providers, and always willing to do it. You can, but you know, that being said, and it sounds like the people that you, or the folks or the places that you've experienced, sounds like they could use a talk from the Fair Housing Center. But you know, you can offer it up, but until they contact you or they get a fair housing complaint against them, that's what usually perks their ears up. Then they're seeking information.
Thank you.
Other questions for Joe?
Folks, that's our contact information. That's our main number, 402-934-6675 or 1-800-NOW-FAIR. That's my name, my direct number, and my email. At any time, if you have folks that are having issues with their landlord, and it could be a landlord-tenant question, you know, and if it needs more, if it needs an advocate, we do that all the time. Or it just may be a deal where we just tell them the information of where they can contact to get that leaky faucet done, or whatever the case may be. There's never really any one case that's similar, but please refer them to us. We get a lot of referrals from Omaha Human Rights and Relations, who we work closely with, and we appreciate their partnership. But please, that's our information. If you or your staff want a training or me to talk or need or have a client that may need some advocacy, please give us a call.
Thank you, Joe. I was especially pleased you were able to come talk to us today because I've been around the block a few times and have dealt with some housing issues, and the Fair Housing Advocacy Services group has never failed to really step up in situations that I've been involved in. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
For coming today. With that, a couple of announcements before we get to members' announcements. It's looking like we're going to be trying to plan for a presentation potentially on December 14th so that we can avoid the holidays. That would be December 14th at 3:30. We would be having a presentation on affordable housing, but we have to confirm a few things up. So I just want to make the audience aware that we'll be changing our times for presentation, but we are going to try to have a presentation in December. We usually don't, but we had to cancel an earlier presentation this fall due to circumstances beyond our control. So we're going to see if we can do that. So we'll see how that goes. I would see if there's any of the members of the commission that are online that would have any announcements.
I do. This is Megan. So Imagine Inclusion is a nonprofit here in Omaha that is working towards greater accessible and inclusive opportunities in our community. Their current project is getting a fully inclusive and accessible park in Zurinsky Lake. And on December 11th and 12th, they're having their first fundraising event of sorts. It's a drive-through holiday lights display that will be up at the site at Zurinsky Lake. No cost to charge, opportunities to donate. Also looking for people to volunteer and set up light displays and really pack the peninsula full of Christmas lights. So imagineinclusion.org is the website if you want to check out the organization, but there's also a tab there for Illuminate Inclusion, which is the name of the event. And so just want to spread the word and have as many people drive through as possible.
Great, thanks, Meg.
Megan, I wanted to let you know that Calvin's Foundation is a foundation by personal friends of ours whose son, who had special needs, passed away. One of the things that they do is help install playground accessible equipment. So they might be an organization to reach out to see if they would like to partner with that project.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks, Lisa.
I will type it in chat.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Other announcements?
Just happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Enjoy the time with who you can and with our limited availability these days.
It's been a different year. Thank you, Laura. Appreciate that. I do have an announcement. The Monroe Meyer Institute at the University of Nebraska Medical Center is moving. We're not moving soon, but as you can imagine, a unit of the university moving its entire operation to literally a new campus is quite the undertaking. We will be moving from the UNMC campus proper to the UNO Pacific campus at 69th and Spring. We're refurbing a building there that will give us room to actually get a lot more of our work done. Our official opening is not till June, but we'll be moving over the course of this coming winter and spring. So just a heads up, I'll mention it again and make sure that folks have the information to find where we are to get the services that they need. Any others?
No.
I could call on people, but I don't think I will.
No,
Okay.
this is Nancy. I don't have anything.
Thanks. Okay, I want to thank our commission members. I want to thank Joe Garcia from the Fair Housing Advocacy Incorporated Group. Again, we're trying to set up a meeting for the 14th, more to come on that, and then this January we'll be off doing some planning, which we've done a lot of work this year where we had to pivot with coronavirus, a few other things that came up. So we'll be trying to plan activities, our activities for the coming year for 2021, which is going to be a great year. I feel it. So thank you again for your attention. Feel free to get a hold of any of the commissioners if you have any comments, concerns, or questions. You can reach us on, again, the mayor's website at www.cityofomaha. Click on the mayor's office and then click on the Disabilities Commission. Thank you, and again, as Laura said, have a great holiday, wherever it takes you. Thank you.